The Galatians were some of the deadliest mercenaries of the ancient world, serving across the Hellenistic East. But how did they end up in the Middle East instead of just staying in Gaul? And how did they fight? It's time to learn history while changing it. The heart of Anatolia, where things are about to go from bad to a lot worse. While we recruit brave warriors, it's time to talk about the Galatians. The three main tribes were the Volke, Anatolia'S, Strokmi, and Tolstobogoi. Smaller tribes were also among the Galatians. They split off from the main Celtic hordes that invaded Greece in the early 3rd century BC, and they started causing a rampage around Thrace. Due to a Bithynian civil war, they were hired as mercenaries and crossed the Hellespont over into Anatolia, and the rest is history. A history of an all-you-can-loot buffet across West Anatolia. Since we're strangers in a strange land, we don't want culture issues. It's time to research conversion and build a sacred grove. Plant some seeds, that will one day grow into the mighty oak, the Drunemeton, where the tribal elders met to discuss. Remember, the Galatians were a confederation of multiple tribal groups. They would rarely act in full agreement. Meanwhile, our criminal scum of a spy is gonna steal the locals' food because they're not gonna need it if they're gonna die, right? It's almost like Cappadocia knows we're coming for him. You see an army here? I don't. Since World War Seleucids already starting, let's do some 4D diplomacy. Bithynia hates us, and yeah, I totally wonder why, but they're gladly gonna give us an invitation to conquer Sardis without dragging us into the mess. Cyprus is honored to receive us, just like all Greeks, since we're giving them a big, fat Celtic trade agreement. Remember when I said we're gonna play the politics game? Yeah, I lied. It's time to destroy the Seleucids under the magnificent king with stepmommy issues, Antiochus I, Soter, who got his nickname after he, surprise surprise, defeated the Galatians in battle. You remember that history-changing part? It's about to happen. As we march to defeat the Greeks in battle, it's a question of how did the Gauls fight? Well, the Celtic way of war depended on social status and merit you put in battle. Young, unproven warriors would be equipped as skirmishers with javelins, slings, and when it comes to archery, it wasn't really prominent. The archaeological record isn't great about it either, but we know they existed and local hunters could join war bands or defend their towns and hill forts. The occasional axe, spears, and the Celtic oval and round shields were the mainstay for poor and average tribesmen, while higher status warriors could find themselves with better armor. The Celtic linothorax or chainmail, and with iconic helmets such as the Montefortino, adopted by the Romans. And let's not forget the amazing Latin longswords. Celts were known for the high quality of their cavalry, and the Galatians were no different. In their few skirmishes and battles with the Romans, the Galatian cavalry just performed amazing. They also adopted Greek equipment, since they often served as mercenaries across the Hellenistic kingdoms of the time. Not only Galatians proper, but the Celts from modern Bulgaria and Serbia would travel to Egypt in such numbers they actually changed the ethnic makeup of certain areas. A funny parallel to the Sheridan of the Bronze Age. So, the Galatians were considered unstoppable by this point, as they sacked their way through multiple cities in Anatolia and received tribute from others, and the Seleucids were in a pretty bad spot. Other smaller kingdoms in Anatolia like Cappadocia and Pontus had withdrawn from the league, and trouble was imminent with the Ptolemaics in Syria. With a mass of rampaging Celts moving across Anatolia, it's not looking good, right? But the Seleucids had a secret weapon: elephants. Terrifying beasts that the Gauls saw for the first time, and according to the sources, when they saw him, they panicked so hard they crashed into each other and basically impaled themselves on their friends' spears. It's kind of funny when you think about it. You got this army of essentially unstoppable raiders, right? They managed to cleave a path through western Anatolia and reach the center at an unknown spot where the so-called Battle of the Elephants occurs. And it's not even a battle, it's just basically friendly fire because they got scared. The soldiers were cheering and Antiochus was weeping. kind of crazy when you win a decisive battle, right? And essentially, to paraphrase his words, he was crying because imagine what would have happened if they didn't have elephants, essentially, that the glory went to these beasts just because of the Celts getting scared. Unfortunately, this time, fate is not kind to the Seleucids. This is basically how the cult of the savior, or Soter, was formed, and we have a lot of archaeological finds that agree with this, essentially little inscriptions, statues, in general votive offerings, but historians never really got the place of the battle 100% determined. Neither the date. It used to be 275 BC, but based on some new findings, it might have happened even as late as 265 BC. The only thing we can reliably date, though, is the battle ending soon as the Persian cavalry and our Galatian warriors just encircling the Seleucids now pretty much means it's over. They're just gonna slaughter anything that comes their way, and I think they definitely proved this time that the only thing that needs saving is Antiochus from himself. Probably tripped a little bit too much thinking he can take on the full might of the Galatians here. But now, yeah, the Galatians are just entering the rear. Oh, that is just brutality when you're looking at those animations. The Galatians just do a monstrous rear charge, and this is pretty much the death song of the Seleucid army. All that's left is just to clean up, continue with more wackiness on the map, and do some more historical facts. Oh, right. Also just kill everything because we're Gauls, we can do whatever we want. If you ever thought in your life that the mighty city of Antioch could fall to the Celts, well, I guess it's time to go buy that lottery ticket, huh? And now we can have our own elephants. Talk about changing history. Ah, yes, of course Egypt is gonna try haggling with us, but they're in denial. If they don't want to trade. Friend foreigner, it's time to earn that sweet, sweet gold, because elephants are not cheap, man. These things eat more than Obelix. Why would you declare war on me? Armenia no harm? Yeah, I'm done. There are two things that are consistent in the universe. Number one, Seleucids making idiotic decisions both in real life and in games, and number two, me just going aggro every time I play a campaign, so it's time to stomp them into the ground. Wait, is the AI trying to camp the fort entrance with pikes? The machine is learning! Anyway, when it comes to culture, the Galatians were pretty interesting in this regard, as Anatolia is a well-known hotspot for culture mixing, right? So you'd think they'd pretty much get assimilated instantly. But somehow, they still retained everything that made them Celts. Customs, gods, naming practices, and if people like Saint Hieronymus were to be believed, they still spoke a Celtic language in Galatia that sounded just like the Celtic spoken in Europe, in the areas of Belgica and Germania. You know, as much as I want to believe that story, because I'm a huge Celtic fanboy, right? And I do think their culture is just fascinating when we're looking at it on a global scale, I find it kinda hard to believe that the language wouldn't have picked up a lot of loan words from, let's say, the Phrygians they ruled over, partially Cappadocians, or just in general from the Greek language at the time. This is the 4th century AD. It's possible that it was still spoken for a bit longer at least. But they also proved to be surprisingly adaptable within foreign service. As an example, you can already see Galatians with Greek names in high-ranking court positions in the Seleucid and Ptolemaic kingdoms very early on from their initial rampage. At the same time, it's kind of funny because once Galatia lost its full independence, essentially them being absorbed into Rome after being a Roman client/protectorate kingdom, it didn't even take a full generation in some case for parents to start naming their children fully Latin names. They were hired by anyone who could afford them in the Hellenistic East. The most well-known employers being Egypt, obviously, but the Seleucids did it, Pergamon, Pontus, and if some sources are to be believed, perhaps some of the Galatians or their descendants went as far as Bactria, or the Greco-Indian kingdom. That's kind of a long way from home. The best part is, in this battle, they don't even need to go all the way to Greco-India or something to see elephants in action, because we've got them in our army and they're just obliterating the enemy. Look at the kills already. You'd kind of think the Levy Freeman would have broken away by now, but nope. Somehow my army is just keeping cohesion for the most part. And the elephants are just massacring the Seleucid line. They just don't care what's going on. This is pretty much over for the Seleucids. Just look at those beautiful beasts. It's no wonder the Gauls kinda needed a diaper change after they saw him the first time. After the first time, the novelty factor kinda wears off, but we still love elephants, okay? They're just awesome beasts. And this signals the fall of Tyros. Now that the ancient Phoenician city is in her hands, it's time to pick up one of their cultural practices and sniff snail cones until our noses become purple. Okay, I made that one up. You know what I was hinting at! The ancient city of Tadmor, aka Palmyra, with a glorious history stretching from the Bronze Age and beyond. Yeah, who am I kidding? I just wanted to make this sound cool. They didn't really put up a glorious defense here. They just got slaughtered. It breaks my heart, but Armenia, you brought this on yourself. And speaking of breaking, we broke the timeline so hard the Etruscan League reformed? I think I did a good thing today. We're on that Celtic grind set, and everybody wants to buy our self-care products and courses on how to be a Giga Chad warrior, and the Mediterranean is making us fat from all this money. And this is Sparta. It's time for the Seleucid last stand. No satrapy made it in time to help him, and with all the Gallic skill, who needs a magic potion to kick ass? So here's the big question, what happened to the Galatians in the end? Because you don't really see a Galatian kingdom or something, right? Well, turns out in the 2nd century BC, essentially, the Seleucids kinda did a major screw-up and they kind of got involved into a war against Rome because Rome had to play the world police in Asia Minor. Antiochus III got humiliated, we know that story, or better said, we're gonna talk about it more in a future video. So Cneius Manlius Vulso, the Roman consul for the year 189, decided, you know what? It's time to punish the Galatians by launching an unsanctioned war. The Senate didn't approve of this. Vulso marched across Asia Minor, collecting tribute from various Greek cities. Some were pretty happy to receive the Romans. Yeah, I bet they received them all right. An allied force from Pergamon joined up with the Romans, and it was time to declare war against the Galatians. Because apparently, you know what? Assisting the Seleucids in the war as mercs? Yeah, you gotta be punished. In reality, that was kind of a bait context for attacking them because Vulso definitely just wanted to loot and plunder, and hey, Asia Minor was rich from that. Galatians had a lot of loot stored up as well, so 2 and 2 equals Roma Invicta apparently. We're gonna explore the Galatian War, don't you worry about that, when the time is right? But essentially, they got absolutely slaughtered by the Romans, if the sources are to be believed, because hey, why wouldn't you believe the sources that say that about 40,000 or more Galatians died at the so-called Battle of Mount Olympus? Apparently their infantry proved absolutely terrible, and the cavalry was essentially godlike, and in one bait meeting, they almost assassinated Vulso and his cavalry escort. They barely made it out alive, thanks to some reinforcements. But the Galatians were utterly defeated in a series of battles. The Galatians weren't put under direct Roman control yet, but this was a sign of things to come. The Galatians were still used as mercenaries. They were still strong enough, but this pointless war did massively weaken them for the time being. Eventually, Pontus would conquer the area, subjugate them. We already know the story of the infamous bodyguards of Mithridates. But this was not to last either, because after the Pontic Wars, Rome got the area. Galatia essentially dropped their old way of governing. They would appoint 3 tetrarchs. Yeah, I know, it doesn't make sense, right? But one of them, Deiotarus, would use his ambition and become the king of Galatia. The client king, but hey, it's good to be king. For the short while the kingdom lasted. I said kingdom quite a lot, didn't I? But you know what's not good? Getting trampled by elephants like this, but hey, that's what you get for being Seleucid, I guess. Now that we've conquered this miserable excuse of a kingdom, we actually add all their vassals to us. So yeah, apparently the Gauls are the real descendants of Alexander the Great. I guess we're the closest to reforming his empire. So, we've conquered the Seleucids, we've learned a thing or two potentially about the Galatians, and there's more history, more informative Let's Plays. An overload of information coming at your way. Useful or useless, you decide. I hope you enjoyed the show. There's a lot more coming, so stay tuned. And until the next time...